Hi you guys, welcome to my little paintbrush. My name is Miss Cami and today I have a really fun painting for you and I hope you are ready for some fun, okay? I love aspens and I live around the mountains, so this painting just reminds me of home. Before we start, I want to remind you that you can pause this video, you can rewind, you can paint at your own pace. I'm going to keep a pretty quick pace throughout this painting, but I want you to know that you're allowed and should paint however fast or slow that you are comfortable with, okay? Also, you're working with a blank surface to start, and so go ahead and find yourself a pencil and pencil in your mountains and your water area and the ground. I've already done this. You can refer to the picture for reference, or you can pencil this in however you want. A fun thing to do is have a foreground mountain range and then one peeking in the background. I like to do that. A couple other tips is to start and end at different heights on either side of your canvas. As you can see in my ground here, it starts high over here and ends low on this side. That is more attractive to the viewer. Okay, so once you have that penciled in, and you can use any kind of pencil, I like to use a graphite or lead pencil for this because we're working with dark colors and I know that I can cover that up, but also it's great because I can erase it if I don't love where I put it at first. Okay, so go ahead and pencil that in and then let's get started. I've got a nice flat brush. Here is my simple palette that we're going to have so much fun with, and let's go ahead and start in our sky. Okay, so I'm going to get my brush wet. This is a dark night. It's a chilly night. You can kind of feel it with these colors. And so I'm going to bring some black over to my blue, and I'm just going to kind of scoop that up and start painting at the very top of my canvas. I'm going to paint vertically, side to side here. Okay, this is a great time to wrap your canvas. Wrap it as you go so that you don't end up with edges of your canvas that are a different shade than what you want, okay? So a nice dark blue sky up here. As I start to come down towards my mountains, I'm just going to add white to my brush, okay? So I just add some white and just blend that in. Now I'm still brushing vertically, but I am moving my brush up the canvas and down the canvas, okay? So up and down as I go, okay? And I'm letting the paint blend on my canvas opposed to mixing it really well on my plate, okay? So as I go down again, I'm just adding white to my brush and blending that in. You want a pretty generous load of paint on your brush. This helps kind of get it on there, and then you can blend through. And you do want to work pretty quickly through this process because acrylic paint will not blend once your paint is dry. And so even though you might feel a little rushed, it's important to work quickly so that you have a good blend, okay? So what I'm going for is a nice dark beginning sky, and then as I get closer to my mountains, it lightens up, but not too much. I don't want it to lighten too much, okay? Just enough to show that the moon is just kind of peeking through those mountains. Now you're going to probably come into those mountains a little bit with your paint. You might lose the tops of them, but don't worry too much about that. You still want to keep that nice horizontal stroke, okay? So brush, what I like to do is put the pressure on my canvas until I get into my mountains, and then I kind of lighten it so that I can still see those lines a little bit, but I'm still getting that vertical stroke that's important as I'm doing my sky. Okay. So again, I'll just kind of lighten my stroke a little bit, and I can still see them. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed because you're losing your mountains too much, you can wait till your paint dries and put them back in with a little bit of chalk or a pencil. All right, there we have it. We have a nice, beautiful sky. Oh, I had a little bit of dark paint on my brush there, but you can see you just add some white and blend that right in. Awesome, so pretty. Okay, let's go ahead and wash that brush. Give it a good wash. Now I'm going to flick some stars onto my background, onto my sky. You can do this a variety of ways. You can use your flat brush. You can use a toothbrush, or if you have a bristly brush like this one, or even one like this. Anything that gives you a nice flick will be good, okay? Like I said, you can totally use your flat brush and just flick it back. I don't like to damage my nice brushes, so I'm just going to use this really funky bristle brush. I'm going to get it nice and wet, guys. A good splatter needs water, okay? So I'm going to get it wet, go into my white paint. You can see how thin it is. And I'm going to stand back a little bit, and I'm going to pull my finger towards me, not the other direction, or I would flick myself. We don't want that. And see, I'm just going to get my stars on there. Super fun. If you're painting with people, try not to flick them in the face, although that gets kind of interesting. Okay, so we've got our stars in, and then you can give that brush a wash so you can see that step is just super fast and a fun little way to get stars in. So now we can let that dry. Okay, let's go into our water now. All right, get my flat brush ready, and I want to err on more of the blues now in my water so it contrasts the sky. So I'm going to try and stay out of my blacks now. I'm going to get a scoop of white over to my blue, mix it together, okay, and just get a nice water blue and start to fill in my water. Okay, and we can add generous amount of white to it if it's feeling too dark, which it was for me. So see, I just scooped up that white and I let the blend happen on my surface. That's really fun to do when you're painting, especially scenes or nature, because it just kind of, the offload of your brush brings in a more natural feel to it, and I just really enjoy that. So here we go. We're just going to fill in this water here, and we don't need to stress too much about getting paint into the mountain area or the ground, because we are going to be putting a darker color on those areas, so it's okay. Now I'm going to dip the edge of my brush in white, and I want a white layer, so to speak, before the water comes to the ground area, because I feel that my moon, which isn't even in yet, will be casting a glow on the bank here of my river. So I'm gonna use that edge of white to really, see, I'm just going the edge there, to add a really bright white section before my water ends. And just keep working it. Your paint is really wet, which is going to give you a fun blend, but it might also, if you work it too much, you'll lose any white. You'll just have a lighter blue. So you got to kind of know when to stop working your paint and just have a nice white glow to our water. There we go. Now it's coming. Sometimes you have to really give your brush a good chunk of paint to work with. And you can totally just kind of brush it out into the water. That's fun. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to go with dark on the other edge of our water because the mountains are clearly going to cast a shadow. So we're going to paint darker up there, and this is where that contrast will really come in. Just adding a bit of water to my brush. I can tell right here my stroke is breaking a little bit. So if I add some water, it just helps. And again, remember your mountains are there. So those little imperfections right now are not a big deal because they are going to disappear when we put in our mountains. So after you've got that nice shadow happening and you can see where the light and the dark meet, you can kind of brush while that dark paint is on your brush. I like to just brush in kind of like a bit of ripple to my water. And if you feel like you've lost some of that light through your ripple, you can come back to it. But remember, the water shouldn't, all the ripples shouldn't curve that direction. It should still be kind of vertical because it's running that way. The ground is just making it look like its shape's different. Okay, so you can just lightly brush in some of those. Beautiful. Love it. Okay, we're not going to wash our brush. We're going to just get right into black and paint the very foreground of our painting. And it's just going to be black, but because I have the whites and the blues on my brush, it's going to turn to this charcoaly gray color, and it's also going to offload some fun dimension. Okay, so I like to do that. You don't have to wash your brush if you're staying in the same family of colors. It's just not necessary. Okay, so this is when we can really get that shape in and clean up any edges to our water that were bugging us. I know I'm super OCD, so when I see an edge that's not clean, it's really hard for me to be patient and wait till that step comes. Well, this is the step. So now you can clean that up. You can move to the toe of your brush if you'd like and really get right in there for a super clean look. Again, you'll see that as I brush through, it's offloading these blues and these whites, and that's just because we didn't wash our brush. Those colors are they're still on our brush, okay? I'm gonna put a little bit of white on my brush, and I'm just gonna lightly put in a little bit of highlight along the top of my bank here, because I like to play off of the idea that that moon is just casting its glow. Again, the moon that we don't have yet, but it's coming. You don't want a whiteout situation, and you don't want to have the same thing happening in the ground as you do in the sky. You want to have a contrast, so you want to stay fairly dark, but it's fun to just kind of put in a few little highlights, add some dimension. Okay, wonderful. Now we're ready for mountains. And again, I'm not going to wash my brush, you guys. I do, however, want to stay in the blues for my mountains, okay? For my sky, I went pretty dark. I went pretty into my blacks a lot. So for my mountains, I want to stay more blue, but I still want a deep, deep, deep blue. So I am going to keep that black on my brush and add a little bit more. I just don't want the same value as my sky. Okay, I want it to be obviously more blue. And you can see that as I brush through, it's got more of that blue in it than black, and that's what I want. Okay, so just brush through there. Okay, so we're just going to keep filling in our mountains with this nice dark blue. Okay, and you can, there's a little bit of paint in there. You can switch this up. You can say, well, I'd rather have a more blue sky and a more dark mountain range, that's totally fine too. Okay, so we're just going to follow those lines we made earlier for our mountains. Now our blues, because we're not adding white to our blue, it could be pretty transparent to you, and you might want to do 2 layers. It really just depends on how thick you're putting it on. But if you need to do 2 layers of paint, you feel better about that, that is totally fine. Nice peak right there. Come down here, and I like to kind of round out the connections between my mountains, just like so. Just brush that in. As we get close to our water, this is when we want to clean up that edge and not get too quick with our brush stroke, because we don't want to lose our water, especially our shadow. We worked hard on that. So as you come down, just kind of slow down your stroke. Make sure your paint is really thinned out so that you can butt up against that river and get a nice clean brush stroke. Don't forget, if you are wrapping your canvas, to do it as you go, okay? Every time you get to the edge of your canvas, that's a reminder to go around it, which can be tricky to remember when we're so focused on what we believe is the only thing the viewer will see, but obviously they will see the edges as well. I need to thin my paint a little bit. It's not letting me come down with a nice clean stroke. And I'm really picky about that. I like a nice clean stroke. All right, we've got our fun foreground mountains in. Again, if you are feeling like you are going to need another layer, this is a great reminder that you can pause the video, okay? And you can put in that other layer once it dries. Okay, so I'm going to rinse that brush out. Give it a really good rinse. It's got so many shades of black and blue in it. Now I'm just going to switch to a smaller flat to put in my little mountains that are in the background, okay? These are going to be a lighter blue, but they're also going to have a touch of that black in it for a nice gray. Again, I don't want to veer on the side of more gray than blue because my sky is, so I want there to be a separation. I want there to be an obvious amount of blue in my paint so that there's contrast between the sky and my mountain. Okay, lighten it up pretty decent here. There we go, that's the shade I'm looking for. Okay, and then we're just gonna find our little mountain. Actually, this is a little too close. You can see it's very close to the color of my sky, so I'm gonna lighten it even more. Even though I am going to put highlights on it, I want there to be contrast right now. So I'm just gonna lighten my blue, some more white here, there we go. And then I'll just put in my background, my little peaking mountains here. In the background there. And I love the peaking mountains, and it's a great way to showcase background and foreground, and things that are further away, they get blurrier, more blurry. just put that in, focusing on that lighter color so that we have good contrast, right? Nice. And of course, cleaning up any edges of our mountain range that we need to clean up as we put this in. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and let our mountains start to dry so that we can put in all the fun shadows and lights, which go in pretty quickly, so you don't need to be stressing about that, okay? So we're just gonna let those dry. I'll wash my brush and I'm gonna put my moon in. So give my brush a good swish. Now I'm going to just go ahead and freehand my moon. If you want to grab a piece of chalk, chalk is a great tool to use here. You can chalk it in. I'm just going to freehand it. I am comfortable with my brush. I'm using my medium, and I want to come, I don't want to center my moon and I don't want to have it too far to the right. I'm just going to come right here and I'm just going to circle in my moon. I like to start smaller because I can add, my moon can grow. It just can't shrink very easily without me having to redo my whole sky. So I like to start smaller and add to my moon instead of the reverse and go for my big moon and then find out I have to take it away. So again, chalk it in if you need to. Chalk on a canvas is very similar to chalk on a chalkboard. It can wash off just about the same way, okay? So it's a nice way to get what we want without having to commit to it right away. Almost got the size I want of the moon. I like a decent sized moon. Here we go. Okay. It is coming along nicely. While this white is on my brush, I'm going to come up to my background mountains. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press at the beginning of my stroke, half of my mountain, I'm going to press and pull towards the left. So I'm going to press and I'm just going to pull my stroke towards the left, okay? So press it and pull it lightly to the left, okay? And just come down your mountain slightly like that, pulling your brush strokes to the left, okay? Really, that's all there is to these mountains, and getting that dimension to them is just lightly pulling that stroke, okay? So let's go ahead and work on our big mountains now. We're actually going to use the blue that our background mountains are. So that's this lighter blue we mixed. We're still using our medium flat brush for this. I'm going to do the same thing I just did in those mountains. I'm going to come up to the top here, I'm going to curve, and I'm going to pull down. Okay, and these are bigger mountains, so I'm going to pull down further here, all the way down. Okay, as far down as you want to pull. Okay, I'm going to make my color just a little bit darker. Just, there we go. Just this little darker. So maybe not exactly the shade of those. But just curve, and you're just focusing going down one side of your mountain. Okay? And you're kind of curving that stroke as you go down. All right, let's go to our second one and do the same thing. Curving it down. You don't have to go as far down on every single mountain. This one we're going to curve and kind of carry it off, kind of like it's looping into that next mountain that's off of our, out of our view here. And just go down here. So we're putting in light and letting the first layer of our mountains be the dark. Okay, just like so. Okay, so mountains seem intimidating, but you don't need to worry about them. Now, if at any point you want to kind of blend back into your shadow, you can put that shadow back on your brush and you can blend that direction. Okay, see how I just kind of feather it back in that direction? So you can do this at any point in time if you feel like you're losing some of that dark. Okay, so now we're going to lighten up even more. So now I'm probably is where I'm going to go with that color of my background mountains. And now I'm going to put in a layer of that lighter color. Same thing, I'm brushing it down, but I don't want to take away from that blue on there. I want that blue to stay there, okay? That darker blue, and I'll even like feather it back a little more in places so it doesn't look like I'm creating just a straight line down my mountain. Okay, do the same thing here. Kind of having fun with it, feathering it. Every mountain should look a little different. So that's okay if that's what you're getting. Feathering it down. Fabulous. Just wipe your brush out. Go to just white. Okay, and then this is the very highlight of your mountain. Okay, so this is when you can really have a white out situation. So you want to be careful to just kind of barely kiss your canvas with some of this white. Don't let the white take over the whole canvas. Okay, all those values we've already put in, we want those to stay. We just want a little bit of that white to come through. Okay, you guys painted mountains. That is it for those mountains. Give your brush a nice wash, nice and thorough. Let's give our moon a second layer of white. Still using my medium flat brush. I'm going to paint in another layer of white here on my moon because it's white against all that dark background, so we want to make sure that it's got good coverage. Okay, while the white is on my brush, I'm just going to make sure that my background mountains have that very bright snow-capped look too. So you can just kind of go in there and put that in there too while you're at it. Okay, I'm going to wash my brush. Make sure my paint is thin now. It was a little thick on there, so now I'm going to have white on most of my brush and then a little black on an edge, and I'm going to shadow the right side of my moon. Okay, so I'm just going to come around the right side of my moon and go around like so, and then just blend it in, okay? And just focus on that side, okay? Blending it in nicely so that the right side of your moon is a little bit of a shadow. But don't lose your white moon. A lot of times what happens is we lose the white moon, so you can go back to your white and just really blend, 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 okay? And it's kind of cool because you'll have kind of that, shoot, I can't get the black on my brush. Have kind of that half moon look there, all the way around. Okay. Blend, blend, blend. And just work that edge, work that edge, work that edge. This part sometimes takes me the longest time because it's a circle and it can just feel like I can never get it right. So take your time with it. Again, you can pause, but just have that nice shadow on the right side of your moon. Okay? Wonderful. We've got all of the fun background details in. Now we're going to work on those beautiful aspens that are all in the foreground. You want to make sure your surface is nice and dry, and then you want to get a piece of chalk, okay? Or maybe you have a white pencil or lead, anything you can see over the dark, okay? And you can freehand these, but I like to just chalk in the base of my trees, okay? So I'm going to start with a big one that's right here. It's going to go all the way to the top, and I'm going to pull it down. Now notice I don't like to do a perfect straight line. That's not true to nature, right? So I kind of give it a little bend, and then I have another one that's pretty close to it, and then one over here that's actually going off of the page, okay? And I have these branches that come, and you can chalk these in, or you can just freehand them, okay? Just like that. I'm just gonna put those in. So those are the 3 big aspens on the left of my canvas. On the right of my canvas, I'm gonna go just above my mountain range and pull one down right there. I don't want to lose my mountains. It's one reason why I had to paint this piece so many times when creating it, is I kept putting too many trees in. I love aspens and I got a little aspen happy. Let's put a few, just the tips. I picture this is kind of, we're seeing the tops of the aspens. So there's some that are peeking in right here. And we'll just get all those in, just like that. So just chalk them in. This is a rough sketch. You don't have to follow these lines exactly. Remember, this is chalk, so we can erase it at any point in time, okay? So let's make sure our medium flat brush is super clean, because now we're using our white paint. So I've got a super clean medium size flat brush into my white paint. And I'm actually going to use the toe of my brush. Okay, so I'm going to really thin, and then as I come towards the base, I'll thicken it. Okay. These small trees, I'm going to use my detail brush on, not my flat, so that I make sure those tops of those trees are nice and thin. But these bigger ones, I can use this. So press using the toe of our brush, coming through toe of the brush. Okay, same thing over here, pressing towards the end, pressing towards the base of our aspen, because of course the trunk of our tree needs to be thicker so it holds up our tree, right? And then this one over here, same thing. You'll notice whenever you're working with chalk that it dries up your paint pretty quick. So if you're feeling like my paint's feeling really dry, that chalk is going to dry it out, okay? So depending on how thick you loaded your brush and how it offloaded, you might need to do 2 coats on your aspens. Maybe you're happy with 1. Okay, regardless, we're going to rinse that brush and we're going to switch to a detail brush to put in our smaller branches and our smaller trees. So now I have a little brush and I'm going to load it with my white paint here. And the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of fix up the top of that tree. Okay, and now I'm going to have a good time putting my branches in. Okay, very simple branches. We don't have to follow our chalk lines exactly. The main thing that we're trying to do here is make sure the branch goes nicely into our tree and is bigger at the base of the branch, just so that the branch can hold it up as well, right? So let's come in this one and down. And you can have some little ones kind of peeking through here like that. Okay, just have fun with these trees. They don't need to be perfect. Trees are not. I have seen ugly trees. And aspens are some of my favorite to paint because of how different and how almost messy they look, and yet they're so fun. They're so artsy. I feel like they're just full of life. And every single one is just different, and I love that so much. Okay, just gonna keep going here. Pressing in. On our trees here, make sure your paint is nice and thin so that you can get through these brush strokes, okay? And remember not to worry about perfectly straight lines here. We're just putting these in. We don't want any two aspen trees to be the same, so that's something that you can watch for too. Sometimes we naturally start to create a pattern without even realizing it. We're painting the same thing in the same direction over and over again, and we want to kind of be aware of that. Okay. All right, let's do the branches on these bigger trees. I like to have one that's kind of pointed over to the moon. And you can kind of just play off of that branch. I don't worry too much about a bunch of little twigs on these branches with this painting. Although you can just keep going and going and going. I love to build trees, and you can totally build these trees and just keep adding little branches everywhere if you'd like. Or you can just keep it simple. I like to let my mountains be the star of this show with this painting, and so I tend to not get too many branches going. Just enough that I have an idea of where to put all my little twigs, my little leaves, I should say. And coming down, some peeking out. I love the idea of branches like meeting and coming all the way down to the base of the tree. I think that's fun. All right, let's put one here. Every time you paint this painting, it's going to be different. Every time you do a tree, a branch, it's going to be different. It's fun to look at a reference, but not always necessary, because we're not ever going to be able to duplicate something that's hand painted. And so it's good to keep that in mind. It takes some of the pressure off. And you can also add branches as you're painting along. You know, as you're filling in the leaves, you can say, oh, I kind of want a branch here or a twig there. And that's totally acceptable. So sometimes you could just let things be where they are and then go back to it, okay? All right, I think this is pretty good for me. I'm gonna wash my brush out, a little detail, and now the fun begins. We get to put those marks in our aspen tree, which I love this technique because it's so fun and not, there's no expectations here. You can just play with these aspens. I've got my medium flat. You can see it's very spread out. It's been this way the whole time, but now that's going to be to my advantage. Okay, and I'm going to load just the tip of it with black paint really lightly. And I'm going to come to my aspens side to side and brush into the center. I'm going to brush those little marks. Okay. And again, every time I approach my canvas, I'm going to just approach it a little differently. Okay. Some areas I'm going to press, and some I'm going to lightly. I'm going in kind of a curved motion with this to indicate that this tree is, of course, round. I go up into my branches. I like to go to the tips of my branches even and square it off a little bit like so. Okay. So super fun technique. Really enjoy it. Just, again, don't create your patterns. Be spontaneous with this. Go in different directions. Sometimes come from the left of the brush. Go to the right. Do your little branches. So fun how these turn out. They look like aspens every single time you do it. And that's just awesome. Of course, you can get super creative with this and you can carve in some initials in these trees. I have so many artists do that all the time, and it's really fun to watch the creativity. Or you can just put in your aspen marks and call it good. All right, these big trees are super fun because we can just kind of come in on each side like this. Some just down the center, light pressure. Every time you hit your canvas, be sure your stroke is slightly different. Some's going up, someone's going up high. Okay. You don't want to black out your trees, of course. You want that white to come. That's what makes aspens so amazing, is they're white. So you don't want to take that away. But those dark edges are really fun. So we're just going to keep putting those in. As we go up our tree. Remember, you still have leaves too. Sometimes we start to judge our painting before it's finished. And there's going to be leaves. And those bright leaves are going to take away from some of these aspen tree marks. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, my aspen's hideous, you're going to have leaves and other things that the viewer's going to be paying attention to. So just let your aspens kind of evolve as you make your marks coming down these trees. Like so. I just noticed this poor tree up here doesn't have very many branches. I just kind of forgot about them. So I'm going to put a nice branch in right there. I feel like that's necessary. And then I can probably even go ahead and put its little markings on. Okay guys, we have one last step, and that is our leaves. So let's wash this brush. And let's start putting in our colorful, our bright yellow, I should say. We just have yellow, but of course you can add multiple colors if you want. We're gonna go with yellow for our leaves today. I've got this nice deep yellow. I'm gonna move a scoop of white over. I'm using my detail brush, you guys. I'm gonna mix white with that yellow. Okay. Loosen up my yellow paint with some water. Nice and loose. Oh, I got some blue in there. Don't want green. Let's see if it kind of mixes out. Or I might have to get some there. I think it mixed out pretty good. Yeah, it's still mostly bright yellow. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to put in our leaves, and these are just a nice gentle stroke. So you just kind of nice and gentle, okay? Start to put these in. I like to stack my leaves up like so, where we just kind of put one. None of them are really attached to any branch. And I like doing that because it takes the pressure off of me, and it's just a little bit more enjoyable to just kind of brush these in. So you can see right here, I start kind of these 3 little leaves, and then I kind of build it up. This is just a nice stroke. Nice, easy brush stroke as we build our trees. Of course, some of our trees will collide with each other, which is fine. And I just keep building and building my leaves here. Some could be falling, all the things here. Some are bigger than others. Some are just a hint of a leaf. And again, they're just these nice gentle brush strokes. As we slow down and let our brush do the work, we're able to create something that's a little bit more natural looking and not so stiff. Because what happens when we slow down and we try and do these perfect leaves is we get outside of what's natural, especially when we're painting a scene that's all about nature. Okay, stand back every once in a while and kind of see where you're at so that you don't, again, create any kind of pattern. And just keep putting in your leaves and enjoying the process here as much as you can. I just like to imagine most of the leaves have already fallen from these aspens, but they just have a little hints of leaves still left. And the first snow has fallen, all the things. This can be whatever story you want it to be. Just gonna keep, I like to work around my branches, but then I like to peek some that are unexpected, maybe around the tree that you can't see, or maybe again they're falling. Any of those things. Just a very gentle brush stroke. You might be seeing some chalk residue on your canvas from when you chalked in your branches and your trees. If you are seeing that, don't worry about it. The best thing to do is to finish your painting, let it dry completely, and then just use a damp paper towel or a wipey and gently wipe over your canvas, and it'll take the chalk right off. And just like that, we just put our leaves in. Again, you can step back a minute. You can ask yourself, okay, where do we need to have another leaf? You can put in as many as your heart desires. You can have some falling there at the bottom. But what we want to do is we want to keep that bright yellow on our brush and then load some white. And we're actually going to go over these leaves all again. I know that sounds crazy, but that combination of those two strokes is going to give you really good dimension. Okay, so just kind of gently, you're going to have some that come off pretty white. Some are going to stay quite yellow. And that's the point of this step, is to create light and shadow throughout the painting. So you can go back into your yellow and your white, get a nice thick load of paint. Every time you do a leaf, just kind of reload, or not a leaf, but every time you reload your brush, just put some of that yellow on and scoop some white on the tip of your brush and put those in. Maybe this ends up giving you an extra leaf here and there. That's okay. Paint it with the same amount of just kind of loose, uncontrolled strokes that you had before, and let things kind of come to life on your canvas. Just like so. This was super relaxing to me. I hope you're getting some of that feeling, a relaxation. I just love how naturally the brush creates what we want here. Working through our leaves. Almost done here with these. If you feel at any point that you went too heavy on the white, you can go back and bring in some darker ones. But you've got quite a dark background, and so the white really helps these leaves pop. Plus, we're dealing with blues and yellows, so if we don't, we're going to create more greens, okay? All right, you guys, that is your Aspen Grove and Mountains. Oh my goodness, let's sign it. I just love this painting so much. I hope you had fun. I hope you surprised yourself in what you could do with a blank canvas and a simple brush stroke. I would love to see your art. Share it with us at My Little Paintbrush. Thanks for painting with me, and I'll see you next time.